So good afternoon. Hello. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. I know you've been at it all week. It's been for some people. It's been a long week, I guess. I'm messing with my colleague here because she mentioned it, but she was just voicing what I'm sure some of you feel. You've been at this a while, and I looked through the whole week's activities, and you've had great people here and great facilitators. So I'll tell you a little bit about me just to begin with, and so partly it's related to that comment. So I'm Scott Simkins. I am currently the department chair, economics, at North Carolina A&T State University, just on the other side of downtown. Right, we're the other UNC system school here in town. We're a historically black college and university. For those that don't know about HBCUs, we're the largest in the country. We're the largest producers of black engineers in the country, largest producers of black CPAs in the country, right, et cetera. We're the other land grant, along with NC State, in the UNC system in North Carolina. Before I was chair of the department, I came back to the department. I was a faculty member, again, a tenured faculty member in the department about 3.5 years ago. I've been chair the last 2 years. But before that, for 12 years, I was the teaching center director at A&T. And worked together a lot with then Ray Purdom, who was here, heading up the Teaching and Learning Center. Ray and I are really good friends. And since then, but also with the folks at Elon, and with Todd. Todd's a really great friend of mine as well. Todd's at Kryzik, who you all know. You have to know once you're around him for just a bit. And we had a really, and still do, there's a great set of teaching center directors and people associated with this teaching center directors here in North Carolina. It's a crazy embarrassment of riches in this state. So you've had a really good opportunity to meet lots of different people and work with them. So that's my bow. I did that for 12 years. It's my passion. It still is my passion. I do work in economic education and research, the teaching and learning of economics. I had over $1 million in NSF grants, including the current one in that area. Right now, we're looking at team-based learning in economics. Okay, so that's my background. But so that's over and above, right? This is a session about, right, meet the editor, right? That's right. When we're all in the right session, yeah. Just make sure this is your chance to get out if you're not in the right session. Either that or I'm not in the right session. But that's my background. So I wanted to give you a little bit more background about that. So that's just one hat that I've worn, and so you have a little bit of background with that. So we've got now about 40 minutes, right? So it's intended to be, as it says in the summary, structured but informal. So there's going to be time for you to ask questions, but I want to do an activity with you. A brief one, right? Again, right about now, he's like, wait a minute, just talk to me, because we've been doing stuff all week. I know this. I was one of you, but I was also one of you people inflicting this on you before as well. So if I could have somebody help pass out, it's a bundle. They actually staple them together, and it's okay. You really don't want to see everything. And I've got one other handout I'm going to give you after we're done with this little activity. It's going to take 5 or 10 minutes. And it's really on I believe, the third page. There's a little, maybe it's the second page. Yeah, the second page. Third page? Yeah, it's second page. Well, page 3, the second full page. Right, there you go. All right, it's a table, right? It has 2 columns on it. And I'll wait just a second. I'll take one. And so what I want you to do individually first. I want you to just jot some things down. It's, nobody else is going to necessarily see this. So what are the qualities of I'll just say traditional research. It's really hard for me to sort of say it that way. I have it in terms of Boyer's 3 dimensions. They're separate from the scholarship of teaching and learning. But you know what I mean by that, I think. So disciplinary research, could be interdisciplinary, but disciplinary research, sort of traditional research. Okay, on that left side. So what are the key aspects, qualities, features of things that are published in that area? And then on the right side, as it says, what are the key features, aspects, attributes, etc., of SOTL research, published SOTL research? And at the bottom, obviously where that's going, right, is to say, what are the similarities? What are the differences? Comparing and contrasting. So, just take, however you want to do it. You can take one column at a time. As you're thinking, you can go across. Okay, but just do it individually. Take a couple minutes. It's a low threshold activity. It's really just to get you focused. So what I want you to do is I want you to take another minute or two, and I want you to pair up. Or if you have three, three is fine. If you have three in a group, all right, and pair up. And I want you to share what you've written down or what your thoughts are about that. And at the end of that, we're just going to spend just a couple minutes talking about, so what are the key similarities and what are the key differences between those two columns? Okay, this is an opportunity for you to kind of check in with another person at your table. So just take a minute or two. You all know each other at this point. So in one more minute, I'm going to go around to each kind of group and ask you to contribute one thing, and we're going to kind of build up the list. All right, I'm going to break into your conversations, and I'm going to go around to each table. We're going to kind of snowball this, and I'm going to ask you, first of all, what are the key features, attributes of sort of traditional research? What are the things that, and we'll just kind of exhaust the list, and then we'll take the other side. So what do you have? One thing. Just one thing, and we'll kind of move around. Yeah, you get to share one from your list, and we'll keep moving until we run out of things. On the traditional research side.
Oh, okay. So for research, it's for the field, contributing to the field.
Okay, contributing to the field. It's low stakes. Generalizable knowledge.
It requires quantitative data.
Requires quantitative data. Traditional research. What are the attributes, features, etc. of that? Similar form. Okay, similar form. Yeah. So right now I'm just getting these out. So I'm not gonna say like really. We're not gonna do that, right? Yeah, we're just getting this out because again, this is a focusing activity, really. So hold on to that thought though. So what else in that column? Large sample sizes. Okay, I just want to go around really quickly. Yeah. Anything else new?
I feel they're the same.
What do you mean by that?
Traditional and model are the same thing.
No, they're the same thing. Oh, we'll come back to that. Okay, we'll come back to that. I'll let you lead the rest of this, maybe. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Are they? That's the question. Are they?
Often more accepted for tenure and promotion.
Okay. Often more accepted for tenure and promotion. Yeah.
Engage with past literature.
Okay. Engage with past literature. Hold on. So we make sure peer reviewed. Yeah. Yeah, you want to exhaust the list? You good with that? You good with what we've done? You want more? You want to add some more? Okay.
They have clear method and norms, whatever the method is.
Clear method and norms. Yeah. Builds on previous scholarship. 3-year turnaround. Wow, this could be a dagger to the heart for college teaching editor. I don't know. Yeah.
I was going to say provide status and career advancement.
Okay, status and career advancement. All right. Anything? Okay, research and best practices. All right. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Implicit disciplinary expectations.
Okay, implicit disciplinary expectations. All right. Jargon laden. Okay. You already saw the other hand that I'm going to give. Yeah. So, want to go to the other side?
Yes.
Involve students. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We'll come back to all that. Yeah. I like that. I can talk about that too. Yeah. What's on that side? What's on the SOTL side?
We're on SOTL.
Yeah.
Well, like we said, it might be less discipline specific.
Okay. Less discipline specific. Okay.
Perceived a little more lowbrow.
Perceived a little more lowbrow. That's what the other piece that's on the front of your three piece together. It raises that question: is it less than, or equal to, or just different? Right? That's what in the three P. I'm not really going to talk a lot about that, but I saw that yesterday, and I thought that might be useful. Yes. More generalized audience. Okay. SOTL side. practical? Okay, so real research is real research. Yeah. Traditional research, right, isn't practical. Okay, all right. Gotta talk to my engineer friends. Oh, yeah. Social side. May not have a control group. Okay. Anything?
Related to that, no single method or the negative, confused about the method?
Okay, no single method, confused about the method.
Authority comes from practice, or may come from practice.
Okay, so may come from practice, authority may come from practice, yeah. Anything else to add to the social side? APA formatting. Maybe. All right. More vague. So this is really interesting to me, right? Because this is so part of the work that I've done previously is just-in-time teaching, right? So if you can Google it, and if you want, whatever. So this is like just-in-time stuff, right? Because I don't know what you're going to say exactly. So this is actually really interesting to hear some of this coming from people who are faculty developers, like vague, etc. But the practical part, yeah. So, but I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back to that actually. So this is interesting because we have our own, right? This goes a little bit to your talk because I came in like the middle of your talk, right? So it's not exactly there, but we have preconceptions about things, and maybe we have to check that out with other people who are different from us, et cetera. See, I was listening. I even did the quadrant thing. I did it, yeah. So you're going to be working with faculty members, some of you, maybe with active scholarship of teaching and learning groups. Some of you not necessarily, but some maybe individually doing that. So how are you going to help them develop stuff that is, I'm trying to remember who it was here or here, that I think was here, accepted for promotion and tenure, for example. So part of my package when I got tenure, part of it was sort of more traditional kind of research in economics. Some of it was a scholarship of teaching and learning, or it was economic education research. That's a different discussion we can have. What's the difference between discipline-based education research and scholarship of teaching and learning, right? But there are all these nuances, and we can talk about, and people want to divide this up and cut and make divisions. That's not really my purpose here today. The purpose is I want to get to the point, the practical part about, like, how do you get stuff published in a journal, right? But the point about this is, there's a purpose to this, not just sort of take time, but to lay that out, because I'm going to give you another sheet. What are the things that cause things to be rejected? What are the things, or the flip side of that, I like to think about the other way, what are the things that will help you or your colleagues get published, right? And they have to do with these things that are similar or different with traditional, I'll put quotes around that, but traditional research, right? Because I would argue that most of the things on the traditional research side, which we all got trained in one form or another, doesn't matter whether it's qualitative or quantitative, which discipline, whether it's history, whether it's education, whether it's whatever, right? We all got trained there because that's how we got our PhDs, right? But there are some differences, I would say. You said the same. Who said the same? You said the same, yeah, all right? And I would argue that there are some differences. So what would be the key? I'm just going to go to that last part on the bottom, and we can continue this dialogue, right? All right. What would be a key difference? This actually is important for manuscripts that I see and why they sometimes get rejected. So there's all of this is going to, I hope, connect for you, right? With what the practical part. What's a key difference between those two columns? So what audience? So different audience. Who's the audience for scholarship of teaching and learning? So any teacher. So what's the implication for that? What's the implication of that? Well, right, so you can understand it. That's part of it. That's part of it. It is part of it. What else?
Very diverse, very broad, and that's essentially who decided.
That's right. But as editors, we're giving those reviewers some guidance as to what the key thing to look sort of. There's some variance in that. But yes, that's right. Right. It's going to be a wide variety of. It's not as narrow as sort of the straight disciplinary kind of expertise. But even there, it can be kind of wide depending on the journal, depending on the discipline. What's another key? Obviously, I'm looking for something, right? I hate that. Don't you hate that? Don't you hate that when people do that? You know. So all those things are important, but what's another key? I want to see whether it comes out sort of endogenously here.
It has to be very practical.
So practical in what way? Practical in what way? Yes, I would agree with that. Practical in what way?
So the song is an investigation into teaching and learning within my discipline or within the discipline that you are in.
Could be across disciplines, but yes.
Myself, I'll be investigating in my
Yeah, okay. With what aim? With what audience? Go with it. Yeah, exactly. To improve what?
I want to improve my teaching and student learning.
Improve your teaching, student learning for published work in the field, expanding the knowledge base about how to improve student learning through improved teaching. All right? And that's one key difference oftentimes between sort of traditional disciplinary research, which does not have that focus generally. Discipline-based education research does, but traditional disciplinary research doesn't. It's to expand the knowledge base, but not about teaching and learning, right? And so anything to get published in a journal like College Teaching, right? But I could say the same thing about discipline-based education or research journals, Journal of Economic Education, Journal of Engineering Education, Journal of Blank Education, put your field in there, all right? They all have to have that aspect. So we get manuscripts that don't necessarily have that aspect. So I'll just give you one example. I'm kind of getting ahead a little bit. I'm going to hand out this other sheet in a second, right, that you don't have yet. That's going to make this even clearer and more practical and pragmatic. But we get manuscripts sometimes where somebody's trying to develop a construct about something, right? It's a test that you could do to determine. But there are no implications there's no discussion, no data, no evidence of data, qualitative, quantitative, about how it can improve somebody's teaching. That's not going to get published in College Teaching, all right? It's not. Now, so I'll usually look at those kinds of, as an editor, we'll screen those up front, and they generally won't go out to a reviewer. It'll come back to somebody, says it shouldn't waste people's time, right? And it's a bad paper, it's just not the right place for it, right? And so we'll make suggestions oftentimes. Yeah, it might be, depending on what that is, it might be better in a psychology education journal or an educational research journal, AERA, or whatever, right? So we'll make suggestions like that. So practical, pragmatic, things that could be in discipline, but it's an investigation of student learning, and oftentimes things that are done that we are testing whether something is enhancing student learning or not. It doesn't have to be exactly that way. I'm an economist, so I do have a little bias that way, right? I mean, I have to be conscious of that, right, when I'm reviewing things, and that's why we send things out to review, right? But oftentimes that's the form it takes. Did I see a hand? Did I see a hand up before you had one up? But okay. So it might be. So I want to just sort of lay that out. So all the other things, I would agree that there's a lot of similarity across the two, between the two, or we should think about it that way, I would argue. But a key difference is the audience and what the aim is. Okay? So I'm going to talk about a few of the things on here to lay the groundwork. And then the third page in the stapled set that you have is an actual review from College Teaching. It's blind. It's there's no identifying information, and it's actually one that we send out to new reviewers for College Teaching as a way to help them understand sort of what a good review might look like. All right, so you all have this set, right? Tips on publishing SOTL work, reflections of a SOTL. So this is your takeaway. You all know how to read. This isn't going to be karaoke, okay? This isn't going to be handout karaoke. But I will kind of go through this. So the first thing up there is pay attention to what the aims of the journal are. And this happens to be the one from College Teaching, all right? The 3 different kinds of articles, their word lengths. And it says, should have significance beyond a single discipline. So we'll get stuff, right, that's for a single discipline. It doesn't mean it's going to get rejected, but it may go back for revision saying, you got to add some stuff. How is this applicable to people in other disciplines? Because college teaching, we have a wide variety of disciplines represented in our readership. Okay? So paying attention to that. So this, how many of you have written grant proposals? All right? NSF, NIH, anything? Just curious. Yeah. But it doesn't really matter. How many of you have been reviewers for proposals? All right? So what's your biggest pet peeve? Didn't read the instructions, poor writing, right? Because it takes you a long time, and you have a limited amount of time. You have like 30 minutes. You know, it's the same idea. So I've been a panelist. I've been a successful NSF grant recipient, but a panelist in NSF, right? And people just get off about, there was a missing word there. I was bleeped out. But they get ticked off. That was the word. Sorry, you thought it was a different word. They get ticked off, right? Because like, I only have so much time. And if I have to hunt for stuff and I got to figure this out. So being clear about, there's another thing in here too about being clear, right? But if you didn't read the directions and you're not hitting all the marks for what should be in there, gone, right? The disciplinary research and Social Journal, the second bullet, that's what we just did. That's what we're just doing, right? So I have some questions underneath each one of these. They're not statements, they're questions to get you to think about them. So they can be questions that you can use with faculty that you work with, all right, for you, yourself, etc. So write clearly without jargon for interdisciplinary audience. Right? If there's any, well, there are many of them are sort of equally important here, but that's a really important one. Because again, we'll get manuscripts and it will be filled with jargon. It doesn't mean it's going to get rejected, but it's going to have to be rewritten in a major way, right? I might understand everything perfectly clear that's in there, all right? But on the statistical side oftentimes, right? And it's not that that stuff shouldn't be there. Right? It's that you have to know sort of what's enough to make your case to provide the evidence, right? That somebody can believe believe in your results, maybe adapt them, etc. And you know, so there's somewhere down, yeah. So it says in there the Goldilocks principle, right? Not too much, not too little, just right. And that's going to vary depending on what you bring in from your discipline, right? In terms of the norms for your discipline, in terms of research, but. So it can go either way, or people can be really, really broad. It can. So let me hold off on that one for a second. All right. Here's the part about your audience: evidence-based advice that'll help others improve their teaching and students' learning. Right. If it doesn't have that, that's one of the key things oftentimes that will zap a manuscript in college teaching. All right. In a Social Journal. All right, it might be different at Teaching and Learning Inquiry, which is another Social Journal from IS Social. Was developed there first, or was started by them. But for college teaching, again, it depends what the aims are. But in particular for college teaching, it's about how to help others improve student learning and through the teaching and learning process. So that has to be a significant part of what's done. It can't just be we did this because we thought it was good to do, right? You have to think about how can other people benefit from this? Something that's significant, right? So sometimes we'll get things that are, it's clear that it was a report that was done on campus. It's interesting, right? But it's clear that it was like a report and it wasn't generalized in the sense of, everything doesn't have to be generalizable. I'll come back to that. I'll say something about that. But yeah, to what extent can others benefit from this? And to what extent was this really something that for internal consumption at the institution, right? And so some people want to do it. They've taken something, they've done something interesting on their campus, and it is interesting. And then they've decided, oh, we should see if we can get this published. And that's a laudable thing. But you really want to be thinking about this beforehand, so you have IRB approval, et cetera, right? And to be thoughtful about the process on the front end. So if you're doing anything on your campus, right, where it's a possibility that it might be something that could be shared at a conference, an AAC&U conference, or a Social conference, a Lilly conference, right? Then go ahead and get the IRB stuff up front. So that opportunity is there. But then think about what you're actually doing so that it actually can be something that counts, right, for somebody, more or less, depending on the institution. Understand the literature, build on the literature, make sure that you've done your homework. Right? So another area where people, where sometimes where people don't get published is it's clear that they haven't done their homework. Right? It's something that's really interesting, right? But it's not clear how they're building on other people's work. I might know how they're building it, and the reviewers might know. And actually at college teaching, we get a lot of people who are new to scholarship of teaching and learning. They're, they're young in the process, whether they're age-wise they are or not, I don't know, but they're young in the process. And so we try to be gentle and we try to be helpful, right? Doesn't mean we're necessarily going to give them a chance to revise, but even if it's a reject, we try and be helpful about that. But in this case, we try to help them understand, and the reviewers are told to do that, to help people understand what other literature they might look at, et cetera, okay? So put yourself in the role of reviewer and a reader. It's hard to do the reviewer part, especially if you're the one writing it, right? Because there are all sorts of blind spots, and then it'd be perfect if you could do that, right? But have somebody else read it, all right? For all those things about clarity, for purpose, aim, is it at all those things above, right? But put yourself in the role of a reader. Would you want to read this? Right? That's hard. I mean, you got to be kind of harsh with yourself, and you got to put it down for a little while, right, and come back to it and say, would I want to read this in a journal? You know? Not like, is it painful, like just the way it's written, but would I want to read this? Would it help me? Right? Would it help me in my class? Is this something I could adapt? Is this something I could adopt? Is this something that would help my students? Can I share this with other faculty members at my institution that I'm working with? Right? That's a useful test. Yeah.
Quick question about putting yourself in the role of the reviewer, of a reviewer. Have you ever been asked to share your the rubric that the reviewers use? Is that something that publication would share? I mean, not publication, a publishing body would share.
Yeah. So do we share the rubric that gets used by reviewers? So not explicitly, because there's not an explicit rubric. Although the last page I'm going to go to in literally just a minute, that has some questions on it. And not all reviewers are going to actually use it explicitly, but they use it implicitly in what they're doing. So that's a great question, right? Read the journal that you're targeting things to. Is what you're writing? Is it a good fit? All right. And just like with proposals for grants, like talk to the program director, write to the editor. So I get emails regularly. Here, I'm not going to read like a whole manuscript that somebody's going to send me, right? Like if you're going to do that, no, you just submit it, okay? But the people don't do that. They send an abstract. They'll send a paragraph, and I can give some quick feedback. Yeah, I think that seems like it would be a good fit, but make sure that you have X, Y, and Z in it, or yeah, probably not. Probably it might be better in a different kind of journal. So that's actually a really useful thing. It saves a lot of time. It's not a 3-year turnaround. I'm going to come back to that. All right, we try and get things back to people within about 6 months, roughly, or so. That's kind of what we try. I want you to take a look at the last page, which is an actual manuscript review set of comments. It's not just made up. This is going to amplify some of the things that are just on that page that we just had, and then I'm going to leave some time for you to ask some questions. Okay? So just go ahead and read through that. So the set of questions at the top get at the question that you were asking, right? Is the topic appropriate? Is there a unifying visible point to the article? Does the structure of the argument and evidence help convey the point? Is the language engaging, lively, and direct? Is the language avoid an excessive reliance on jargon, right? Is it timely? And does the author demonstrate an awareness of other, right? So that's kind of the basic set, and then there'll be a set of overall comments. So just kind of read through those for a minute, because I'm going to ask you, so what do you take away from that? And they're on the back page too, and you don't need to you don't need to get like bogged down in all the individual detailed ones, but there's some sort of common things that you'll see. So what are some of the things that this should echo? So this should give you tangible examples of some of the things we're talking about. So what are some of the things?
Actually, I had a question.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely.
So I'm a historian.
Mhm.
So I haven't done, or I was not trained in quantitative research.
Mhm.
And so I could see kind of making some pretty big rookie mistakes if I was trying to then engage in quantitative research and statistical analysis. So is there a presumption that Sodal scholarship, that you would have those skills coming into it? Can you write it without that, or would you need to have a colleague like co-author to help with that? What would be the pathway to success?
Right. So I've been told, make sure I sort of rephrase or redo the question. So the short version, if I butcher this, let me know. But the short version is if I'm in a discipline where those kinds of, in particular, quantitative skills are not the norm necessarily, or not for me anyway, would I be at disadvantage in trying to do that? Should I try to partner up with somebody, et cetera? So there are two things that I'll say with that. So yes, that would be a great way, right? But if you're David Pace, Joan Middendorf, you know those names, and I assume, yes, right? They might also say, like, it doesn't have to be quantitative, right? It doesn't have to be. It could be about, so how do we know how students learn history, for example, right? And so it doesn't. So you don't have this example happens to be a quantitative one, right? It does, but not all of them are that we get. So you don't need to feel like you have to be pigeonholed into that. We do all sorts of published all sorts of different kinds of work, and some of it's the thick kind, right? The qualitative thick kind of work, but. There's always a challenge with that. So to what extent, things don't have to be totally generalizable, all right? We're not doing randomized controlled trials, although that would be great, maybe, but that's not what we're about. But the question comes when it's something, so, and Lee Shulman had a great ISOTL plenary talk at ISOTL conference. I was in Raleigh now a number of 8 years ago. He was talking about randomized controlled trials, but he was also talking about context matters, right? And so we shouldn't sort of box ourselves into that corner. But it is a case when we talk about context, we should always be talking about what the context is for specific results. But the question, right, as an editor, right, because there's limited space, right? And, to what extent is this going to be valuable for other people, right? And it can be, but that's a trickier space. It's sometimes easier on the quantitative side, but not always. That's the part that you always have to be thinking about. How does it help other people? So yes, if you want to do quantitative stuff, yes, I would partner up with somebody who's doing that kind of work. But it doesn't have to be quantitative. Did that help answer that? Yeah.
I'm assuming your reviewers are blinded to the author.
Yes, double blind.
So I was surprised to see, maybe you can speak to it, that the Berkeley website is here listed. Would that be something that would typically happen?
So in this case, that's where?
It's in the, under major concerns. It's the reviewer citing berkeley.edu website. I guess the authors have listed some
And that may be the
resources.
data set, is what I was wondering, because I was first confused by that.
Oh, we'll make it available in print. Oh, okay. But then they were saying.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. It must be, sorry, I didn't actually catch that before. Yeah, so it must have been, there's something related to that, in this case.
Blind that to the reviewers?
Um,
I'm just curious, because I always take that out if I'm seeing something, or.
Yeah, that one might. I mean, I'll read through as the editor. I'll go through things quickly. I'll go through a piece quickly first to see whether it fits in college teaching or not. But I'm not going to. That's one that could. Not necessarily. I wouldn't necessarily blind that, but maybe. Yeah, maybe. It'd be best if that was blinded.
As a follow-up
Yeah.
question, is there an instruction for authors that reminds them to do that? To take off all identifying institutional and author?
I'm not sure if there is actually. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, most everybody's really good about that, and we'll if we get things in, but it doesn't happen very often actually. We will send it back to them and tell them, you take that out, or we'll try. Or at least if we catch it. Yeah. Questions? We'll just open this up to questions. We've just got a few minutes. Yeah.
Given the wide breadth of methodology and disciplines, how are reviewers identified?
So, I mean, how do we get new ones?
When you get how do you decide who's going to get it?
So, yes, okay, got it. Right, so we have a set of reviewers. When we get new reviewers in, we send them a survey, right? What kinds of expertise they have, what kinds of things they preference, et cetera. So it could be discipline, et cetera. So we try our best to match people up with qualities that the reviewers have. That try to match the manuscript to the reviewer's expertise. Can't always do it, but we try to do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not just sort of like we just throw them out there and see like, well, whatever. You know, this one's first, so it goes to this person. No, we actually spend a fair amount of time.
Some journals you recommend people, because really the people who are going to review your article are only like 20 people.
Yeah.
You kind of have a sense.
Yeah.
Whereas anybody who's ever here, that's kind of.
Yeah. So the reviewers that we get, we actually ask people who are reviewers to suggest other people that they know, right? So it's not just sort of a random collection of people either. And we'll look at their vitas, et cetera, before they come on. Yeah. So we take a fair amount of effort with that, but it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work out.
If no one,
Yeah.
I'll defer to someone else because for time, 'cause I already asked the question, but I do have one.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's okay? Okay.
Yeah.
So the question, when you mentioned, you were chatting about historian,
Mhm.
methodologically, I know that there are methodological approaches that are more teaching and learning, but it could range. It's an interdisciplinary kind of, because everyone's come from different disciplines, but then it's a discipline in itself. So help me with that. Like, do you see does a person get published writing like a historian, even if methodologically, writing like a historian, or is it that there's like a unique tone that you've kind of seen across the, because I haven't like scanned through enough to really wrap my mind around that, but I don't want to assume.
So is there a particular tone, a particular type of article, a particular kind of, particular type of writing? I'll let you. You can go through and look at college teaching. Like you can go through and check me out. But I would say there's quite a variety. If there's a plurality, my guess is it's going to be something where there was some intervention, and did it matter, right? And probably some statistical or some evidence. Doesn't have to be statistical necessarily. It could be more qualitative. So the plurality probably like that, but there's a variety of others. So what we get sometimes is that somebody will have a piece, and cell phone use. This one comes up frequently, and people are just ticked off about this, right? And like they have this you can tell when you read this, like you could tell, anybody in here could tell this if you read one of these manuscripts. You can tell they're just trying to prove their point, basically, and it could be the way it's set up. Like, yeah, that's what you're going to get, and so stuff like some people want to rant. It's not a rant, but yeah, it is a rant. And we try and guard against that. But that doesn't mean that somebody couldn't do really good research about that and find out that, like, yeah, that is an issue. But the way it's written, matters. Yeah, here and then here. I know.
Following along that, Andrew presented a really helpful review of educational development, and one of the things that
And she has a good one tomorrow about SOTL and about going and scaling up. That was a good bookend with this, I would say. Yeah.
So one of the frameworks she noted was that everywhere else in the world, internationally, educational development has shifted from a primarily psychological model to a sociological model. The United States is trailing behind that.
Mhm.
And you read now a vast number of manuscripts, and I wonder, reflecting on that, does that feel true for what you're publishing?
Yeah, so I'm going to say up front, so I'm a person who's big in learning sciences, so on the cognitive side, work that we're doing, team-based learning, et cetera, is trying to look at that as well. So it's not discounting that, but there's probably I would agree with her. There's more on that sort of that cognitive side than the social side, but it's not that second one's not an empty set by any means, and it's not something that we have a sort of preconceived notion about. Like, no, that's going to be no. And I can say our reviewers are really quite open about that too. right? And so people have at the end of the day, is this going to help the readers, right? Somebody, is it pragmatic in the sense of helping the readers, right? Instructors help their students learn better, right? And something that they can apply or adapt for their, or get some knowledge about how they can use that in their own classes. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter sort of where that necessarily comes from, which sort of part of that taxonomy, right? It comes from. Yeah. I probably would agree with her on that. That would be an international difference. Yeah, but it's not it's not to the detriment of people who write in that sort of sociological sort of way. I can think of a couple of different manuscripts that were accepted that were certainly more in that way. Yeah.
I guess I wonder if it's a privilege in psychological or sociological methodologies, right? But I don't.
Not necessarily. I mean, maybe there's some implicit bias, but not necessarily. It's really how well it's written and how well it meets the aim of the journal. Right? That is the biggest single issue. Is that people they want to write about this and not really thinking about how is it going to help, and not just people in their discipline. It could be an example from their discipline, but how could this be applied in other disciplines or more widely? Right? That's the biggest single issue. It's not really so much. It's not nearly as much about that. Yeah. In my experience. Yeah.
That's okay.
But you had one first and then one here. And I know we're getting at the time.
I was debating whether to ask this because this might be a personal curiosity of my linguist self, but since you said intervention a couple of minutes ago,
Yeah.
having it as the first major concern that intervention is jargon, I guess.
Yeah. So,
We determine what is jargon.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
Intervention.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah, fair enough. So I could go back to Randy Bass, about Randy Bass's work. So I have an issue. It's not a problem. It's something. It's an object for inquiry, right? And to help me understand it and to help students learn better. And so I might do something, right? Change something about what I'm doing and see if that matters.
Yeah, my question was about what we consider jargon.
Yeah. So, you're right to call me out on that. You weren't really calling me. I know you weren't, but I'm saying, yeah. So I'm intentionally trying to not use that word in my response. That could be
I
a.
don't think that's particularly jargony. That was my point.
Oh, I see. I thought you were going the other way. Sorry. Yeah. So that would be fine. No, it would be fine. I thought you were saying like, well, that seems a little jargony.
The question that it prompted for me was how do we discern what's jargon?
Yeah. Right. So I would have somebody else read it who's not in your discipline, right, and say, okay, does this make sense to you? I mean, there's a sort of really pragmatic check. I mean, that seems like kind of a really simple answer, but I think that's actually really useful, right? It could be a partner, it could be a colleague, it could be a whatever. And when we go too far, I think we kind of know, especially on the statistical side, that's where the jargon obviously is. But it can happen on the sociological side too, actually. It can happen where people have particular theories that they're talking about, right? And that's okay, but then that's not the point of a piece in college teaching. It's about the application of that, right? And so people have to take a step back from that to not let that get in the way.
So I'm new to faculty development, but in my discipline, which is nursing, there's several journals that deal with nursing education, and I'm just wondering if I'm helping faculty, are there other disciplines that have teaching-specific journals?
Yes, most disciplines do.
Oh, they do?
Yes, most disciplines do. And so that's sort of this difference between what's discipline-based education research and subtle. And, it's like we want to make all these differences and these divides, and there's a big overlap in my view, right? If this is a Venn diagram, there'd be a big overlap between the two of them, but there are some differences. And typically in a discipline, there is this implicit notion of you could be more jargony, probably. There's implicit understanding of things in a discipline, right, that you don't need to explain to people outside other disciplines, and the techniques used. So a discipline may be sort of quantitative heavy and probably might not be a place where qualitative research would be accepted.
Fall under the SOTL umbrella, they'll just be a sub-corner of it?
Yeah. Yes. So what's coming into my mind about this, is in the early days. So I was at the first IS SOTL conference, all right, when it first started, and then the next 10 or 15, next 10 or 14, right? And usually presenting. And this was, so my point about that is I saw this discussion going on, right? That discussion is still here, but it was there at the beginning. And like for me, like I just don't get too worked up about it. So sure, yes. I don't think it's that critical. Yeah.
ISOTL, if you all don't know, the International
Society-
Scholarship of Teaching and Learning.
Right.
And they actually have a resource link that has
Yeah.
great links
Yeah.
of journals and
Yeah.
It's in Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's
Is
in
it?
Atlanta
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah.
October 10th.
Yeah. It's a great, it's different. I used to go to the Lilly conference at Miami, and I used to go to ISOTL, and then there's POD, but I just found I couldn't go to all three. I was just totally worn out because they're all in fall, right?
So sometimes it's still, I said vague, so still confusing a little
Mhm.
bit. So a little bit in the last few minutes, it sounded like this is education on education is kind of what this is a little bit, where it's not, education and economics, it's just education and education from that regard. The other
Yeah.
piece, and maybe I confused myself, but looking at the aims of the journal here, like nowhere does it say scholarship in teaching and learning. It says scholarship of teaching and some methods, but teaching and learning. So it's
Right. So it's not always going to be branded as this is a scholarship of teaching and learning journal. Some of them actually have that, right? The International Journal Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, right? Some of them actually have it in the title. But there are some, yes, thank you for the set of resources at ISOTL. We'll have a sort of more generalizable ones. So I wouldn't necessarily say vague or non-vague, but interdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, maybe not interdisciplinary, but cross-disciplinary. Some interdisciplinary, sometimes transdisciplinary. Those all mean different things as well. And then you'll have, and usually the ones that are discipline-based education research journals, that's the Journal of Blank Education. That's not always true, but that's oftentimes the case. Yeah. And so sometimes I will say in regard to a manuscript, I think this would be better in a discipline-based education research journal, right? Because it really is specific to that discipline, and it's not that it doesn't fit in a SOTL journal exactly, but the readership of college teaching is broad, and it's only going to appeal to a small slice. And so it's not that it's a bad piece, it's just probably not the right fit, right? And so, I'll try to be helpful to people with that. So that's kind of the difference. We want people, and it does say in the aims, it needs to be across disciplines, and that's a key aspect. Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's why I'm willing to stay here, but I'm not meaning to hold you because I know you need to go.